In a world that feels more anxious than ever, what could we possibly learn from a 17th century Puritan minister about finding inner peace? Well, today we're going to dive into Thomas Watson's classic work, The Art of Divine Contentment, and see just how its ancient wisdom speaks directly to our modern lives. So, Watson kicks things off with this incredibly powerful image. He argues that the worry we all feel, that constant nagging anxiety, it's not just a bad mood. It's a destructive force that literally tears our hearts, our very souls apart. It divides us, it weakens us, and it pulls us away from any real sense of peace. And that's really the core question of this entire book, right? If worry is the disease that tears us apart, what's the cure that can stitch us back together? Watson's answer? Well, it's no quick fix. It's a profound, life-altering skill. To start, Watson frames the problem not as some simple character flaw, but as a universal spiritual affliction. He calls it the unquiet heart. And I think this metaphor he uses is just brilliant. Watson says worry is like a disease that just drains our spiritual strength. It distracts us from what actually matters. He points out that we get so obsessed with how we're going to live that we completely forget to prepare for how we're going to die. It just pulls our focus onto our troubles and completely away from our purpose. Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, what's the cure? Watson introduces his solution as a learned secret, a concept he calls divine contentment. And this is the absolute key. Contentment isn't just being happy with whatever happens. No, it's an active, difficult skill. It's the art of changing your heart to fit your circumstances, not waiting around for your circumstances to change to fit your desires. Huge difference. It's a learned secret, a divine art that you actually have to practice. And this next idea really drives the point home. Watson says it's not enough to just hear about contentment. He says a lot of us are like leaky buckets, right? Truth pours in during a sermon or a talk, but it drains right out again. To actually learn it is to internalize it, to digest it so that it becomes a part of you, strengthening your soul from the inside out. Okay, but if this is so powerful, why is it so rare? Well, Watson argues it's because this is a lesson that our own nature just can't teach us. In fact, it's one of the hardest things we could ever hope to learn. He basically boils it down to two big reasons. First, it goes completely against our nature. We are not wired to deny ourselves, to find peace when we're struggling, or to embrace suffering. And second, it's above our nature. It requires a kind of spiritual logic that goes way beyond human reason. To believe that you can gain everything by losing it all, or that you can become wise by first admitting you know nothing. All right, this is where the rubber meets the road. Watson doesn't just stay in theory. He directly confronts the real-world objections by asking the hard questions that we're all thinking. So let's kick it off with a huge one. A fear that drives so much of our anxiety, financial ruin. What happens when everything you've built your life on just vanishes? Watson's answer here is just so insightful. He makes a distinction between your estate, your worldly stuff, which he calls luxuries or extras, and your portion, which is your true spiritual inheritance. It's like a thief can grab the cash from your wallet, but they can't steal the deed to your land. Your real treasure, he's saying, is totally secure. And then he goes even deeper to something even more painful, the loss of a child. How could anyone possibly be content in the face of that kind of grief? And his advice here is, well, it's gentle, but it's also incredibly firm. He suggests we think of a child not as something we own, but as a precious gift that's been lent to us for a time. The idea is that sometimes God lets the starlight in our lives fade so that we're forced to look for the sunlight, to turn towards the ultimate source of all light and comfort. Next up, he gets real about the pain of betrayal. When people you trust turn on you, that bitterness can feel like it's going to eat you alive. And again, his answer points us upward. He reminds us that while our friends here on earth might let us down, there is a divine friend in heaven who is constant, who is wise, and who is perfectly faithful. That relationship, he argues, is the ultimate anchor against the storms of human betrayal. And all of this leads to this amazing metaphor. Look, a contented heart doesn't mean you won't feel the storm. Of course you will. The ship is going to shake, the waves are going to crash against it. But because it's anchored in something much deeper and more stable than your circumstances, it won't be swept away. It will not sink. Okay, so after showing us how to defend contentment against life's worst storms, Watson shifts gears to talk about the rewards. What is the ultimate value, the surpassing worth, of actually mastering this difficult art? And the number one benefit, he says, is this. You get a little piece of heaven right here on earth. Because what is heaven really? But a state of perfect peace and satisfaction in God? A contented heart lets you experience the very first taste of that ultimate reality. And these aren't just pie-in-the-sky ideas. The benefits are super practical. Watson says a contented heart gives you an inner joy that your situation can't touch. It tunes your heart, kind of like an instrument, getting it ready for prayer and service. It strengthens you, it helps you avoid sins like impatience and envy, and, maybe my favorite part, it adds a little drop of sweetness to even the most bitter cup. He gives us another fantastic metaphor to hold on to. Think about a really well-made watch. You can turn it upside down, you can shake it, move it however you want, but the inner mechanism, the gears, the spring, it all stays steady, keeping perfect time. That, Watson says, is the contented soul. So no matter what's happening on the outside, the inside stays true. This really brings us to the core paradox of the whole thing. Most of us spend our whole lives trying to find contentment by getting more money, more status, more comfort. But Watson just flips that whole idea on its head. The secret isn't in raising your income, it's in lowering your desires. And that really leaves us with one last, challenging question to chew on. In this constant chase for more, have we been trying to solve the wrong problem this whole time? What if the real path to finally having enough isn't about getting more at all, but about wanting less? Not about gaining the world, but about finally gaining control of our own hearts.